TV app from the Google Play Store. Here are our major stories. Jamaica falls 6 places on the Human Development Index, and Transport Minister raises concern over the number of road fatalities so far this year. Transport Minister Robert Montague has again awakened concerns regarding the high number of road fatalities on the nation's roadways since the start of the year. Mr. Montague says 155 families are now mourning due to these incidents that could have been prevented. We hear more from CVM Live's Khadijah Thomas.
Montague says drivers must stay in their lanes to save lives.
I want to make an appeal to all of us to make a resolve today not to turn up at your funeral at this time. If somebody is planning your funeral, make sure you don't turn up at your funeral.
The little boy next
The Transport Minister cautioned the drivers to not use their cell phones while driving, skip lanes unnecessarily, but to make a decision to be safe while using the roads. One way, he says, is for drivers to utilize their seatbelt.
A lot of persons believe it's not the manly thing to do or the womanly thing to do to use a seatbelt. Use your seatbelt. And some people have a heavy foot and they like to put the pedal to the metal. You hear me ask Jimmy a while ago, there's no road in Jamaica that he knows of that you can start the road and end the road staying in your own lane. So therefore, take your time. That's right. Take your time on the road.
Montague says the nation's roadways should not be used as racing tracks, as this will put the lives of many passengers and pedestrians at risk.
You're not at Dover. You're not at Vernon Field. You're not at Palisades. There are established racing circuits that you can go and put the pedal to the metal. But don't do it on the road. And many of us who ride, we don't want to wear the helmet. And then when we don't wear the helmet and we end in a traffic crash, we end up at the hospital and there's additional costs to the country.
Montague was speaking at the 10th Jamaica Driver and Traffic Safety Expo at the Ronnie Williams Entertainment Center this morning. Khadijah Thomas for CVM Live.
Executive Director of the National Integrity Action, Professor Trevor Monroe, says there is much more to be done in overcoming developmental challenges in the island, as law plays a critical role in decision-making. Once again, Khadijah Thomas reports.
According to Professor Trevor Monroe, the latest report from the United Nations Development Program has revealed that Jamaica is now ranked 94 out of 186 countries on the Human Development Index (HDI). Monroe says the country has now fallen 6 places on the HDI since 2010.
There is unquestionably much to be done to overcome development challenges, and law, as well as legal professionals, law enforcement and justice sector officials have much to contribute if we are to advance in the way that we wish and in the way that we must.
Professor Monroe notes that law and statutes play an important role in human development, as the Emancipation Act of 1830 had moved us from slavery to being freed. He says the law has given us the right to choose and make well-thinking decisions.
And perhaps that security on the basis of law is one of the reasons why today Jamaica is ranked as #1, not #2 or 3. #1 in the world in terms of women occupying senior management positions.
Speaking at the University of the West Indies Faculty of Law 4th Annual Symposium on Development as the World Turns, So Must the Law, Professor Monroe adds that it is clear that law has played a critical role in advancing our development.
None of these milestones shall be sustained in the way that they were anticipated unless we remain vigilant, unless they are defended and maintained by those committed to uphold the law and to ensure that the advances made by our people are not undermined by partisan interests or minority self-interests.
Khadija Thomas for CVM Live.
In this update now, investigations are still ongoing into the circumstances surrounding the death of 10-year-old Javon Elliott Owen on the Gregory Park Main Road in Portmore, St. Catherine yesterday. Reports from the Caymanas Police indicate that around 7:50 in the morning, young Elliott was on a Jamaica Urban Transit JUTC bus when it's alleged that he fell from the rear door and was run over by the bus. The police were summoned and he was taken to hospital where he was pronounced dead. Now, the JUTC driver has been warned for prosecution. The JUTC has since acknowledged that the incident in a release stating that the circumstances leading up to how the incident happened remain unclear, but investigators are probing that tragic incident. Agriculture Minister Audley Shaw says hotels will soon have to use more local produce. As CVM Live's Vaughan Thorpe reports, the minister says this is to minimize the rate of glut in the domestic agriculture sector.
The hotels on the North Coast, the very thing that we have got on right now, they have flown them in planes coming in with the tourists to feed the tourists.
The Agriculture Minister is again highlighting the need for Jamaicans to put idle lands into productive use, as there is a troubling reality, as food imports to hotels are at a staggering 60%. The minister was emphatic in his call to have the matter addressed.
That is one thing I can tell you, that's on my radar. That has got to change. Once we ramp up production, what do we do with what we produce? We can't then produce and then we start to fall and say, Lord, we don't have no market. We have a glut.
In highlighting other countries that have had successes in minimizing food imports, Shaw says he hopes Jamaica will get there soon.
In other countries like the Dominican Republic and Costa Rica, they have carved out an arrangement. Yes, bring the hotel, but purchase from us locally. Well, if they can do it, we can do it too. We must have the courage.
Shaw was speaking at the launch of the 66th Denby Agricultural, Industrial and Food Show in Maypen, Clarendon. Vaughan Thorpe, CVM Live.
This is their day. 22 domestic workers standing and dancing to one beat with the Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, Babsy Grange, and former Prime Minister Portia Simpson Miller. All across the world, the growing movement to assert the rights of domestic workers as a workforce took center stage this June 16 in observance of International Domestic Workers' Day under the theme Uniting for Domestic Workers' Rights. Now, did you know that an estimated 67.1 million people are believed to be employed in domestic work around the globe? Most are women who cook, clean and care for children, the elderly and entire households in general, 24/7. Now, despite carrying out these chores in private spaces, there are concerns about the legal protections of these workers, some of whom are subjected to exploitation and abuse of all forms. Minister Grange says domestic workers have moved from a dark place way up the scale of life to be observing International Domestic Day.
International Domestic Workers' Day, as part of the global calendar of celebrations, puts the spotlight on a group of people who hitherto and for many years were literally downtrodden. Their situation around the world is by no means perfect now, but in many countries they have come a far way, Jamaica included. Ladies and gentlemen, Jamaica has come, as we would say in Jamaican parlance, a long way. Happily, very happily, gone are the days when the treatment of domestic workers in many instances bordered on slave labor, and when we spoke derogatively describing the domestic worker as the maid or the yard boy.
Discussions taking place is the fact that domestic work is still one of the most undervalued and least regulated forms of employment. Questions are being asked: why are domestic workers excluded from protections in their country's labor laws? Education Minister Senator Will Reid is calling for an affirmative strategy to be taken in empowering the nation's youth to access tertiary level education. This, he says, will lead to an empowered individual and a better society. Khadija Thomas reports.
With only 18% of Jamaica's youth currently enrolled in tertiary institutions, compared to 80% in developed nations, the country's education minister says students should not be prevented from accessing opportunities which are available to them.
You have a population of mostly poor people. You have to have an affirmative strategy that takes on the cost to empower those persons.
Senator Will Reid maintains that we must integrate the technical and the traditional education, which will lead to further transformation within the educational sector.
Even with the current system of the traditional 5 years of high school, what has been the outcome? Society has done a longitudinal study over many years. We are stopped at 30% of our students achieve the desired qualification at the end of 5 years.
The education minister also notes that in order to empower our students and enhance our standards, we must learn from other developed nations.
Developed countries don't end high school at grade 11. But the model is Finland, which is the best system yet. So therefore, should I benchmark against Finland or a lower standard?
Education Minister Will Reid was speaking at the regional back-to-school meeting for Regions 1, 2 and 6. Khadija Thomas for CVM Live.
Jaquan Iron and Steel Company Limited, JISCO, Alpart, in partnership with Alpart Community Council, have been promoting the proper disposal of garbage in several communities in Manchester. The partnership has seen the donation of garbage skips to communities in the parish. Public Relations Officer for Alpart, Julian Keane, confirmed that the garbage skips were installed in the Prospect, Dove House, Cheapside and Morningside communities.
We need 12 garbage skips, and this year we're doing 7, and we want to cover all our 45 communities in and around Alpart's operating area with garbage skips.
Alpart is an important contributor to Jamaica's economic and social development through investments in environment protection and community development. The company has a mining complex. The Petroleum Corporation of Jamaica, PCJ, has launched an internship program which will see hundreds of young Jamaicans gaining exposure to tertiary training this summer at the University of Technology, Jamaica. This will be done over separate 3-week periods. CVM Live's Vaughn Thorpe tells us more.
It is an excellent move to meet the need for further education and skills development, Technology Minister Andrew Wheatley believes. The internship program, executed through a partnership between the PCJ and UTech, is seeking to afford young persons a pre-university experience in a college setting over the summer.
Under this program, secondary school graduates with a pre-university experience in the fields of technology and business will be given a period of internship, during which they will be exposed to life within a university setting, while at the same time being exposed to possible areas of study at a tertiary institution.
The program will cover and be undergirded by a wide area of subjects according to their interests and academic competence, the minister added.
What I can assure you, though, is that participants, all 1,000 participants, after the training period, would have been exposed to at least one technical area undergirded by appropriate training in support subjects of mathematics, language, information technology, and entrepreneurship.
It's a collaborative effort that will help the government in boosting the country's human capital and help participants convert ideas into sources of income, Wheatley also noted. The minister made the disclosure recently at the launch of the internship program at the Spanish Court Hotel. Vaughn Thorpe, CVM Live.
And now our regional and international news.
Making the top regional news this evening, in Guyana, an underground gas pocket exploded at an East Bank Demerara residence on Thursday evening when construction workers were drilling a hole for domestic purposes. Reports are that the owner of the house was drilling a well when the workers hit the gas pocket, causing the explosion. Witnesses say the gas was spraying as high as 200 feet into the air for about an hour and a half. The yard has since been cordoned off and is being monitored by the authorities. The Civil Defense Commission has since confirmed the presence of methane gas, which is flammable, and as such, a request has been made for residents to desist from lighting matches and stoves. And news close to shores, a Jamaican man has been sentenced to 6 years in prison in the Cayman Islands after he was convicted of wounding with intent for hitting his supervisor on the head with a hammer. According to reports, Dane Damian McPherson was going about his usual work routine when the attack occurred. The 33-year-old warehouse man claimed that his boss was a persistent bully and said he was only acting in self-defense. However, CCTV footage showed him grabbing the hammer and pursuing his employer, hitting him several times on the head during the process. The judge jailed McPherson for 6 years and recommended his deportation once he has served his time. And on the international scene, Donald Trump is describing the decision to jail his former campaign manager as tough and unfair. A judge ordered the detention of Paul Manafort until his trial in September. Prosecutors accuse him of trying to tamper with witnesses in the investigation into Russian meddling in Trump's election. More from Al Jazeera.
Paul Manafort began his day a free man and ended it in handcuffs. The judge had told him he could stay under house arrest until his trial. But then the government accused Manafort of trying to tamper with 2 witnesses and alter their testimony. The judge said Manafort was treating his trial like a marketing campaign, abused her trust, undermined the credibility of the court. So, she said, he'll stay in a jail cell until his trial here in September. Manafort's expression didn't change when he heard the news. He simply stood up and started to walk towards the door, turning around just once to wave goodbye to his family. Before the verdict, U.S. President Donald Trump once again tried to distance himself.
He worked for me, what, for 49 days or something? A very short period of time.
That is not true. Manafort actually worked for the Trump campaign for almost 5 months. At one point, he ran it. Manafort was clearly going to fight the charges against him. Now he'll be under increased pressure to cooperate with investigators to avoid potentially spending the rest of his life in jail. He is a man who has lived a life of luxury for decades, now discovering the harsh reality of life behind bars.
And that's it for regional and international news. I am Vaughn Thorpe. Good evening.